As the saying goes, as kids we love the heroes, as adults we understand the villains.
Before the fall, we were only dancers, angels gliding over the floor. Time stood still, and we were sure of the answers. We waited, but some wanted more. High above the world, we had it all. So no one seemed to care when evil came to call. And soon we knew temptation, and we sinned. Then he closed the door. We can't come back again.
Paradise Lost, John Milton's classic epic poem about the war in heaven and the fall of man. So, this was actually a reread for me. I had read Paradise Lost years ago. I think I actually did a video about it when I was first starting out here on BookTube. But I thought it was time for a reread. And this book was then and still was now one of the hardest things I have ever read. This book is hard with a capital H. It bombards the reader with so many references, biblical, mythological, and geographical, and as well it is at times so confusingly worded that it can be something of a slog to get through. However, nonetheless, this is still one of the most majestic and sweeping and powerful works ever penned. It is a cornerstone of Western literature and a work towards which I have such conflicting feelings. So, what I'm going to do here is give a summary of Paradise Lost. Then I will discuss the work's central antagonist, the reason why this is even still talked about at all, and why it's such a grand work. And then I will give my final thoughts and analysis and critique of it. So, yeah, join me, won't you, as I go through John Milton's Paradise Lost. Paradise Lost uses for its basis, obviously, Christian mythology. However, pretty sparse Christian mythology, actually, because you may not realize just how little of what is in Paradise Lost is actually in the Bible. Obviously, in Genesis, you get the Adam and Eve story, and then in, like, the book of Isaiah, you get some kind of hinted backstory at the fall of Satan. And then, of course, in Revelation, you get a still pretty brief summary of the war in heaven. But John Milton took all that and he filled in the gaps, which were pretty sizable, and he wrote Paradise Lost. Now, Paradise Lost is an epic poem, and it opens as epic poems traditionally do, in medias res. Satan and his fellow fallen angels are in hell, having just got their asses handed to them, and they are despairing. However, Satan manages to rally his band of renegades, and they set about the construction of Pandemonium. That is actually where the word Pandemonium comes from, Paradise Lost. It is the capital of hell, you might say. And then they hold a council, and Satan says, "It has long been foretold that God would create another world, our world. And since it's pretty evident by now that we can't go head to head with God, what I'm going to do is I'm going to journey to this world, and I'm going to see if I can't tear it down." So, after meeting his own unwitting offspring, sin and death, at the gates of hell, Satan exits hell and traverses the chaos. Now, this is where John Milton's imagination is pretty remarkable, and where he also commits something of a heresy in what he imagines lies between hell and earth, because the traditional Christian view is that God created everything ex nihilo, or from nothing. But Milton instead posits that before anything ordered existed, there existed something called the chaos. And so Satan traverses this eldritch horror of the chaos and eventually comes to Earth, where he sets about trying to figure out how to orchestrate Adam and Eve's downfall. And then in the meantime, Adam and Eve are given by the angel Raphael the backstory for the war in heaven and what became of Satan and who he is and why they need to watch out for him. And then Satan, enters the serpent and tempts Eve, and then she tempts Adam, and then they mess up, and then God is all like, "Oh, y'all done messed up. You got to get the heck out." And then at the very end of the poem, the angel Michael gives to Adam a vision of basically the entire Bible, start to finish, pretty much. And then it ends with Adam and Eve leaving Eden or paradise. So that is the plot of Paradise Lost. It fits well into the mold of the epic poem, because not only does it open in medias res and then we get the backstory later, but also because there are other elements of it that are harken back to older epic poems, such as the birth of sin, which John Milton imagines as having sprung from Satan's brow, just like Athena did from Zeus. As well, Satan's traversal of the chaos is likenable to Odysseus's journey into the underworld. Even though it is, based on Christian mythology, there are other mythologies that factor in here, and it's also quite remarkable how he ties it all together, how he makes the names of the demons in this book be the names of Old Testament deities like Moloch and Belial. It's really quite remarkable how he kind of pulls everything together in a coherent fashion. But yeah, that is the plot of Paradise Lost. For a considerable portion of the duration of Paradise Lost, the main character is Satan, formerly Lucifer. And not only is he the main character for a great deal of it, he is without doubt the most dynamic and well rendered and well rounded character as well. And he is the reason why this work is as great as it is. Now, I'm just going to say it right now. Satan, as written by John Milton, is the single greatest character ever created, bar none. To me, this is beyond debate. Satan in Paradise Lost is the greatest character ever, because he takes the reader through such a broad spectrum of emotions, and it's really just magnificent to behold. This work is worth reading. The only reason why this is worth reading is for this character. This is all the value in this work rests on the shoulders of Satan. But now, from the start, people have wondered, considering that this work is so devoutly Christian in its messaging, why John Milton would make Satan be the main character for so much of it. Like William Blake famously said, John Milton was of the devil's party, whether he knew it or not. But it's also said in the foreword to this edition here that Milton was aware of this, and that he could have very well gone back and revised Satan's lines to make him not nearly so heroic, because Satan is not portrayed in Paradise Lost as overtly villainous as one might expect, but rather as something of a tragic anti-hero. And Milton, like I said, could have gone back and changed that to make that be different, but he didn't, and it is a very good thing that he did not, because that would have just completely ruined this entire work. And also, it would not have done justice to Satan, because if Satan is not alluring, if he does not have a certain glamour, a certain luster to him, then why is the road to destruction so broad and the gate to life so narrow? John Milton also provides Satan at that point in the work known as Lucifer with a motivation, because in the Bible it's never explicitly said what Lucifer actually does. Like in Isaiah, it says you thought to set your throne above that of God. But it's never explicitly said what he did. I mean, obviously he was prideful, but in Paradise Lost, he will not bow to the Son of God, because Jesus shows up in this, but he's not named Jesus yet. But the Son of God is introduced by God. And by the way, Milton commits the Arian heresy here, just as an aside. But in the backstory which Raphael provides to Adam, God introduces his son to the angels, and he's like, y'all work for him and y'all have to bow down. And Lucifer is like, nope, kneeling's too hard on the old knees, and he just won't do it. So he rebels and he is cast down. However, Milton endows Satan with a sense of tragic grandeur, which is really unparalleled. And all the best lines in this play are his, some of which I will read now, some of my favorite. So, after they're, arrive in hell and they realize that they can't win in their war against God, Satan consoles himself with these lines. What though the field be lost? All is not lost. The unconquerable will and study of revenge, immortal hate, and courage never to submit or yield, and what is else not to be overcome. Because it illustrates his resolution, if nothing else. That even though he got his ass kicked and he's now in hell, he still doesn't regret doing what he did, because he says, I can still hate and my will is not conquered. And then a couple of pages later, we have obviously the most well known and iconic excerpt from the work. Whenever Satan says, is this the region, this the soil, the clime, this the seat that we must change for heaven, this mournful gloom for that celestial light? Be it so, since he who now is sovereign can dispose and bid what shall be right. Farthest from him is best, whom reason hath equalled, force hath made supreme above his equals. Farewell, happy fields, where joy forever dwells. Hail, horrors, hail, infernal world, and thou, profoundest hell, receive thy new possessor, one who brings a mind not to be changed by place or time. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. What matter where, if I be still the same, and what I should be, all but less than he whom thunder hath made greater? Here at least we shall be free. The Almighty hath not built here for his envy, will not drive us hence. Here we may reign secure, and in my choice, to reign is worth ambition, though in hell. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. Again, that's obviously the most iconic line in the book. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven, because you don't get more badass than that. You don't. You don't get more badass than saying, I would rather stand here in hell than kneel there in heaven. I mean, so many people have thought that John Milton, secretly sympathized with Satan. Yeah, I think he probably did, because he's rather sympathetic. I mean, and that illustrates a kind of a peculiar aspect to Christianity, does it not? That God is rather an alien entity that's kind of unknowable, but the devil, on the other hand, is achingly human. And now, when he arrives in Eden, Satan says this line here. After doing some soul searching and reviewing his current situation, he says this line here. Which way I fly is hell, myself am hell. And that hurts, because it illustrates what he's like at his deepest, at his core. He cannot be happy, because it ties back in kind of to what he said earlier about the mind being its own place and can make a heaven of hell or a hell of heaven, because that's what his mind did. It created a hell of heaven because he could not be second fiddle. And here he's realizing that even when I'm not physically in hell, I might as well still be, because hell is in me, because I can't escape what I am, and what I am is perpetually unhappy. But then when he resolves himself to tempt Adam and Eve into eating the fruit, he utters this line right here, which is one of my favorites out of the work. So farewell hope, and with hope farewell fear, farewell remorse. All good to me is lost. Evil, be thou my good. again, the best lines in this are his. He is the only reason why this is even worth reading at all. Um, but this character is, again, to me, just towers over all other characters in literature. The pain, the anguish, the bitterness, it strikes a chord. It really does. And that's why, especially to modern readers, way more so probably than even when this was, initially published, you're going to identify with him. And that's kind of, I guess, what Milton, intended, because there is, you know, something there to identify with. No matter, like Dr. Phil says, no matter how flat you make a pancake, there's still two sides. And Milton was aware of that. And so to make Satan not as compelling as he did is to not do justice to the character. So uh, the character of Satan in Paradise Lost is utterly marvelous. He is the only reason why this is worth reading at all. And he makes this work be as grand as it is. So now I'll talk about my own personal thoughts and feelings towards Paradise Lost, as well as analyze and critique it, if I may be so bold to critique something that stands this high in the ranks of literature. Uh, but like its central antagonist, I guess I will be that audacious. But anyway, so Paradise Lost, I said, is one of the most conflicting things that I have ever read, and that's because, as I just said, the character of Satan in this work is, to me, the greatest character ever created in any work of literature ever. Um, but nonetheless, Paradise Lost is not a work that I can say that I really like. It's a work that I admire immensely, or at least admire certain parts of it, certain aspects of it immensely, but I don't really like it, and it largely has to do with the incredible misogyny in this work. Paradise Lost is, bar none, the most misogynistic thing I have ever read in my life. It's like most misogynists be playing at 10, but this one goes to 11. John Milton really was a level 11 misogynist. And now you're going to say, but you can't hold that against the work, because obviously this is from a different era. This is reflecting different views. You can't hold that against the work. Yes, you can in this case, and I'm going to explain why. Because the misogyny in this book is so extreme that it undermines the logical integrity of the very premise of the work. So Milton hammers home over and over again. And it's not just something that's like tossed off once and then, it moves on. No, it hammers home time after time that women are stupid, they're feeble morally, intellectually. Eve in this book is basically just a animate sex doll for Adam. It's pretty clear that the only purpose of women, is just to serve men, including sexually. And so in this book, Eve is portrayed as incredibly vain and incredibly stupid. Whenever she is first created, she sees herself in a pool, and she is just enamored with her own reflection. And this is a direct echo of Narcissus. Narcissus and Echo. It's a good pun. But anyway, it's a direct echo of the story of Narcissus. So already from the start, she is kind of in love with her own self. Um, and again, as Milton hammers home over and over again, she's stupid because women, they just ain't got the same mental acuity that men do. But here's the problem with that. Why is she blamable then? Because Satan tempts her because she is vain and stupid. Why is she blamable for being what she was created as? How is she at fault for being tempted because of her vanity and stupidity when she was created vain and stupid and unable to withstand the temptation? And not only that, the punishment that Eve is dealt after um, they both eat the fruit. The punishment that she is meted out is nonsensical. It's not. It's basically just a restatement of what she was originally stated to supposed to have been like to begin with. It doesn't make sense. And beyond that, there is at least one other problem that I found in the book, and has to do with what I think is a plot hole. And maybe I'm wrong about this, but it strikes me as something of a plot hole in the beginning of the work. Whenever they are having the council of hell, Satan says it has long been prophesied that God would create a new world, which is, our world, and he's going to go there. But in the flashback sequence that Raphael relates to Adam later on, he says that after Satan's rebellion and he was cast down, that God just decided on the spur of the moment to create Earth and man. So which was it? Was it long prophesied, or was it just off the dome? It contradicts itself, or at least it appeared to me. I think that qualifies as a plot hole if I'm correct in that assessment. Um, but yeah, those are my personal qualms with it. But still, nonetheless, this is a magnificently worded work. I mean, the poetry in this is soaring. And even though, it is incredibly misogynistic, after Eve eats the fruit and she offers the fruit to Adam, um, there is a really touching scene that I can't help but love, because Adam in the book is the true hero. Satan maybe occupies more page space, but he is the antagonist. But Adam is meant to be the real hero. But even though he falls like Satan did, um, there is still nobility in him, and that is why Adam is kind of a foil to Satan, because even though they do wrong, or rather, I should say that Adam is kind of complementary to Satan, a more positive version, I guess, of that character. Because even though they both do wrong, they're both still nonetheless noble and heroic in doing wrong. Because Milton doesn't portray Adam's temptation as so much of him being duped into eating it. Rather, Adam willingly does it out of his love for Eve, even though she's basically just a sex doll to him. He still does love her, and it's what he says that's so touching. Whenever he knows that she's doomed now, she comes to him and she's like, "Hey, this talking snake convinced me that this was all right to eat, even though we were told not to. So you should try it." And he's like, "Oh, you done messed up," but he hasn't yet. But he's weighing it in his mind whether he should follow suit or abstain. And it's what he says that's just so touching. He says, "However, I with thee have fixed my lot, certain to undergo like doom. If death consort with thee, death is to me as life. So forcible within my heart, I feel the bond of nature draw me to my own in thee. For what thou art is mine. Our state cannot be severed. We are one flesh. To lose thee or to lose myself." That goes right to the heart. As much as I detest the views which Milton espouses throughout this work, I still can't help but be moved by that. He's like, "You're my girl, and we're gonna ride or die together." And so Adam eats the fruit, and they both fall. But damn, what a glorious fall it is, because he's doing it for the woman he loves. Even though Milton, almost immediately is like Adam should have been loyal not to Eve but to God. But it's still just so touching whenever he's like, "To lose thee or to lose myself," and I just can't help but love that. But anyway, so yeah, to rate Paradise Lost overall, how I see it, this is definitely among the greatest works of literature. I'm not sure exactly where, but it did enable my favorite book ever, Frankenstein, to be, because if you've read Frankenstein, you know that it opens with a quotation from Adam in this: "Did I request thee, Maker, from my mold from my clay to mold me, man, did I solicit thee from darkness to promote me. So this kind of allowed my favorite book to be. So it's definitely up there, even though I don't like a lot of it. But yeah, to rate this, I'm gonna give this an A. Not quite an A plus, even though this is definitely among the pantheon of great works of literature. I'm still just going to give this an A and not quite an A plus because I think it does have at least a couple issues, but nonetheless, it is still a work of absolute utter magnificence. In the beginning of Paradise Lost, John Milton proclaims that his intent in writing this work to justify the ways of God to men. Now, that's a tall order, and I think his success in that endeavor is highly questionable. However, it is nonetheless still a masterwork and, again, a cornerstone of Western literature. And it's odd for being this renowned and this lauded and being as old as it is, you would think that this would have been adapted to film at least once. I mean, Hamlet gets adapted to film in some form or fashion, basically, every few years almost, it seems. But Paradise Lost has never been adapted to a film, and I guess that is reasonable considering that you're gonna get that NC-17 rating because you're gonna have to go the full frontal nudity route if you catch my drift. But also, I don't know if this would lend itself so well to like a live action adaptation, but you know what? This would slay. This would absolutely slay as like an anime. I could definitely see Paradise Lost as like an anime. Studio Ghibli, get on it. But anyway, Paradise Lost by John Milton. Have you read Paradise Lost? If so, let me know down in the comments what you thought about it, what you got out of it, whether you have agreed or disagreed with anything that I've said about it here today. And if you have not read Paradise Lost, I would highly recommend reading it only to experience the character of Satan, which is, I do maintain and will likely go to my grave maintaining, is the greatest character ever created. That's the only reason why reading this is worth it. But yeah, it definitely is hard. Like I said, this is probably one of the hardest things I've ever read. Lots of references that most people won't get, very strangely worded in certain areas, but nonetheless, it still soars in many ways. So I could recommend it, but mainly just for Satan. But anyway, and as always, if you have enjoyed anything you've seen or heard here today, remember to hit that like button and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, peace.